Yeah, I have an amendment as part of this grouping, Amendment 40. And it's about the tax treatment of these institutional investors and these corporate landlords and their impact in the housing sector and on affordability and rents. I didn't hear all of Deputy Lahart's contribution there, but I think the thrust of it seemed to be to suggest that there was a time when we needed these investors, that they did bring some beneficial impact to the Irish housing sector, but that maybe we need to tighten up a bit. Now, I disagree with that narrative. I think it was a terrible, terrible mistake that we are paying a terrible price for, to bring them in, to invite them in, as was done in 2013, 2012, a period in particular, when there were a lot of meetings between the Department of Finance and these 65 meetings, I think, between the Department of Finance and these investor funds, where no doubt they were acquainted with the tax breaks that were available if they invested in the Irish property sector, and they moved in on scale, and they bought up NAMA's portfolio, the biggest property portfolio in the world, I think it was at the time, which was in public hands, about 40 billion worth of sales. NAMA has got cash sales of about 40 billion, but actually I'm sure that the actual value of that portfolio is probably nearly double that now. So we had the state had in its hands the biggest property portfolio in the world, where we could have solved, even in the depths of a very severe crisis, we could have solved the housing crisis, which predated even the crash of 2012. It's always been present in my area. It's always been a disaster. It's heartbreaking, to be honest, just having to deal with it day in, day out. But we could have solved it with sites like Cherrywood, which is being built out now by one of those investor funds. They flipped quite a bit of it. Johnny Ronan's got his hands back on it, courtesy of Dún Laoghaire Down County Council selling off some of it. Just unbelievable stuff. You know, I met with Hines and they said they couldn't deliver the apartments up there for anything less than over 400,000 euro, which means you'd need an income of about 100,000. It's certainly in excess of 100,000, maybe 120,000. Average house prices in our area now are 560,000 euro. It's just mind-boggling. You'd need income of about 150, 160,000 euro to get a mortgage off a bank for a house at that price. And they have contributed to all of this. The rents now in my area in excess of 2,200 euro a month. You'd need net after-tax income of 26,000 euro just to pay the rent for average rental prices. I mean, how anybody could describe this situation as anything other than a disaster. You know, it's meaning the social cleansing of places like Dún Laoghaire, because for working people, that's just clearly just, you know, you're never going to be able to afford that. So you're just being driven out. I mean, Hines sat on that huge portfolio for quite a long time, which I'm sure was about waiting to get the prices up, flipping some of it on. And we don't know, even though 15 million euro of LEHAF funding went into Cherrywood, we still don't know how much affordable housing we're going to get for that 15 million. When the LEHAF was originally brought in, we were told that at least 40% of any development that was funded with LEHAF would be affordable housing. Within a few weeks, that commitment disappeared from the conditionality around LEHAF, and now we're getting for next to nothing. We still don't know. I mean, years on, we have no idea how much affordable housing we're going to get and what price the affordable housing will be. Similarly, on Shangana, where we've been campaigning for the LDA, now taken by the LDA, was a public site. We've been campaigning for, I think it's nearly 15 years now, we've been campaigning to get public and affordable housing built directly on it. Still not a sod turned, and we still don't know how much the affordable housing is going to be. But it's going to be a discount on the market. But if the market is at 560,000, I mean, seriously? Even if it was a 25% discount, it's just useless, worse than useless, in terms of actually addressing the housing crisis in our area. And all these investment funds, you know, what do they actually build? Very little. There's some building now, but only where they've got deals where they can lease it back to the local authority at extortionate prices. And even then, after 25 years of those lease arrangements, those entities can pull out and the tenants could then be left high and dry. And of course, we know, because on a sort of individual level, the likelihood of that happening, well, we've seen it with HAPs, haven't we? You know, arrangements, people are socially housed under the HAP scheme with these landlords who are getting extortionate money from the taxpayer for these HAP arrangements, and, you know, week in, week out, the landlords pull out of these HAP arrangements when they decide it's more beneficial to them not to be in it, to sell their asset, which is accumulated in value, or to opt out of a HAPs deal because they think you can get higher rent elsewhere, whatever the reasons. Or the St Helens Court residence that I've brought up, I don't know, 50 times now at this point, bought out by Apollo, big American-based investment fund, who tried to increase the rent by 60%, then tried to mass evict them, and they couldn't get away with that, then flipped it on to another vulture fund, who then tried again to mass evict them, slowly whittled down the tenants who just couldn't bear this, the stress, of the anxiety of it all, and now they've actually succeeded in at least legally mass evicting them, although the tenants still have nowhere to go, so they're still physically there, but every day wondering, when am I going to be evicted? And who've now got a letter from that vulture fund saying, we're taking you to court, we're going to do you for costs unless you get out, but they have nowhere to go because you can't afford rents of €2,200. They were paying €1,000, which is not, you know, a hefty enough rent. They're willing to pay a bit more, but they can't pay the rents in our area. Where are they going to go?
Thank you, Deputy.
So that's what these entities have done to the housing sector, and they pay very little tax on the enormous increased value of their assets, which we gave them for the most part, and on the huge rental revenues that they generate for themselves.
Deputy Bernard Durkin, please.